All right, so here we are at the results screen, and there are a number of tools we can use to narrow down our search here. First one I want to talk about is down here, the publication date filter. Um, I'm sure most of you have experience working with databases and date filters, right? Your graduate students. So I'm gonna point this out though. There's a little bit of a difference in dissertation research than sometimes in more scholarly research. And what I mean by this is, right, the normal rule of thumb for social science research is that it should be 10 years old or newer. But you have that 10-year window you should be working with. And of course, there's all kinds of factors that can affect that window. One of the things with dissertation research, though, especially if you're looking at kind of the history of an idea, you can stretch that window a little bit more to look at the development of an idea. And sometimes that development occurs with a dissertation that's written maybe 2 years, a year and a half before a scholarly article, several years before a scholarly book. And so sometimes it can be worth it to go back a little bit farther than that 10 years, if the reason calls for it. In my own personal practice, I prefer to just enter a date range rather than use the sliders. The sliders, right? The way they work in a lot of databases, it's you slide for the decades and then you have a second slider for the years. I just prefer to put a database in there. Okay, so just that cuts us down to about 1,600 results, not bad. Let's look at another important filter. Talked a little bit about this earlier, and that's the subject filter. Right, they usually, a lot of databases will give you a number of them of top subjects, and then you can hit more. Saint Search, the catalog, kind of general catalog for the university, lists all of these down the side rather than opening up a dialog box like this. So it's slightly different. If you're not familiar with subject searching, an easy way to think about it is that they are sort of like descriptive tags that are added to records. An important difference, however, does exist between subject terms and tags. Subject terms are predefined. There's, I guess you could say, within professional practice, there's a set of language that's used. We call it a controlled vocabulary. Tags can be a little bit more free-flowing, but that's kind of the difference. So scrolling through these tabs, scrolling through the subjects allows us to create much more narrow results lists. So let's say that we are interested in Indigenous education and shared leadership. So we could go through and scroll and find the subjects that have to do with K-12 education. We'll say that for this example, and then just mark those. So let me go ahead and do those right now, and we'll come back in a second. Okay, so going through, I've marked a number of them. Again, this idea of understanding where our focus is really important, right? I kind of verbally said, let's restrict it more to K through 12 education, kind of leaving that also at more public education allows us to not include things like religious education, adult education, higher education, and those things. Let's go ahead and click apply. Right, reduces us to 279 results, right? So just by using a couple of tools, we've been able to pull it down from 2,200 results even further. 279 actually is not that bad. Right, you can go ahead and take some time and look at the abstracts for that number of records. Let's go ahead and focus on the item records now. I'm going to point these out here. I'm going to open up the item record, but we're going to see a number of the same tools in the item records. I just want to point that they're down here. Let me start with this really quickly. You can, from here, right from this screen, just go ahead and click Show the Abstract, and you can see the whole abstract here. That's a really helpful and time-saving feature to go ahead and use. Like I said, most of the dissertations in ProQuest Central are full text, PDF available. So most of the time you'll be able to get those. There will be some exceptions. We can talk about those in a bit. Order a copy is to order a physical copy. Don't really need that a whole lot now. I'm going to go ahead and put abstract and details, although to be honest, a lot of what I'm going to show you in the abstract and details can also be looked at in the preview. The preview is usually the first few pages of the publication, including the abstract, but the abstract and details has all of that information. A little bit easier to just kind of get through. Okay, so we get to this page, Antioch University, right? So we can see where was this dissertation published. We can also see when it was published. That's all up here. It's also down here in the details. Identifier keywords. These are, nowadays, these are provided either by the schools or by the individual authors. Depends on the program. But these are liked subjects. However, they're a little bit not quite as controlled. So they can be a little bit more helpful. They can be pretty helpful. Down here, we'll see, who the author is. This is always kind of cool. The author is going to be hyperlinked, and so we'll get to, if they have other publications within the database, we can see that. So that can be a really helpful tool. How long the dissertation is, that shouldn't be a make or break kind of thing, but it can help us to see it. This can be really important, the advisor and the committee members. As we are on the PhD level, we need to be working towards expertise in the field in general. So looking at the advisor and the committee members can be a really important way to begin to understand who are the important thinkers that we can look at. The advisor in most cases is going to be picked by the individual student, because the advisor is going to help them with understanding. We're going to be able to direct them on how to shape their research and such. So paying attention to who the advisor is can be really important in understanding where the dissertation work is coming from. Okay, let's come back up here. Every once in a while, sometimes I forget to do this. This is a list of related items within the database. They're not always going to be they're not always going to follow all of the filters, but this actually can be a pretty useful tool. So point that out. This can be a very helpful tool. The cited by tool will tell us that within this database, there is going to be, there may be other publications that draw from this work. This one, it looks like this is probably a master's thesis rather than a whole dissertation, but oftentimes this is a list of articles that we can look at that can be really, really helpful. We can also see at an instance notice the references. Where is the author pulling their information from? And I always like to tell students, so these two tools, cited by and references, give us a sense of the life history of the ideas. Where did it come from? and where have other people taken it? That can be hugely helpful for us as scholars to see and get a sense of the life of these ideas. Okay, I've had to skip forward. Again, like I said, most of the dissertations are going to be full text. You will occasionally run across something like this, place-based outdoor learning enriching curriculum, case study in Australian primary school. This was, a dissertation was done in Australia, so it wasn't published through UMI. However, get to full text. This is going to link outside of the database. So what this one is doing, and I want to recommend this at all, I'm glad it came here. What this one is doing is linking us to the library, the school's website. And a lot of schools now have institutional repositories, which is where they'll put things like electronic dissertations and theses. And when we're here, right, you can download the PDF from right here. So if there is a situation where it's not directly available, one of the things I do recommend to students a lot is go to the school's websites, the University of Cincinnati, and on the search bar for the school's website, type in electronic dissertations and theses, or just dissertations, or dissertations and theses. Sometimes schools will vary the language a little bit, but if they have a collection of their own dissertations, you'll be able to find them there. Nowadays, it's almost required to make your dissertations openly available. In the past, that wasn't the case, but it's becoming very common practice to make all dissertations openly available. Okay, so that's how you get a hold of dissertations using ProQuest Direct. I'm doing another short video on some other tools that we can use on the open web.